My daughter-in-law wept at every word I spoke and turned my son against us using her tears. What do you do when your son's wife weaponizes her tears, turning every innocent word into an attack that pushes him further away? For years, I watched my family crumble, my son slipping through my fingers, all because one woman perfected the art of the emotional ambush. It was soul-crushing. You know, when my son, Reggie, married Dina 4 years ago, I had my concerns. Little things, you know? But I pushed them down. I just wanted my boy to be happy. During their engagement, Dina was sweet. She'd laugh at my husband's terrible jokes, offer to help in the kitchen. She even told me she always wanted a close relationship with her mother-in-law, especially since her own mom passed young. I bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. I truly believed I was gaining a daughter. The wedding? It was beautiful. I cried happy tears, watching my son start his new life. And then, the honeymoon ended. And everything changed. The first incident? Just 2 months after they tied the knot, at a family dinner. I casually mentioned that Reggie used to devour my pot roast when he was a kid. Dina went quiet. Later that night, Reggie called. Dina was apparently so upset because I'd made her feel like she could never compete with my cooking. He said she cried for an hour after they got home. I apologized, even though I genuinely had no idea what I'd done wrong. I just chalked it up to newlywed adjustments, figured we were all finding our footing. But then, it just kept happening. Again. And again. And again. I asked Dina about her job at a birthday party, and she told Reggie I was interrogating her career choices. I commented on how nice their new couch looked, and suddenly, I was criticizing their decorating, because I didn't praise everything else. I invited them to Thanksgiving, and Reggie was told I was pressuring them to spend every holiday with us instead of letting them start their own traditions. It was unbelievable. Every single interaction, every innocent comment, got twisted into something hurtful, something that made me the villain. And every single time, Dina cried. And every single time, my son called me, asking why I couldn't just be nicer to his wife. It was pure madness. My husband, Kevin, he noticed it too. He said something felt off about how often Dina got upset over nothing. But I, in my eternal optimism, kept trying to make it work. I told him, maybe we're being too sensitive. I tried harder. I thought about every single word before it left my mouth. I walked on eggshells at every family gathering, terrified of her reaction. It didn't matter. Dina still found something wrong with everything I did. If I talked to her too much, I was smothering at her. If I gave her space, I was cold and unwelcoming. A gift? The wrong thing, proving I didn't know her at all. Ask what she wanted? Then I was putting pressure on her to manage my feelings. There was simply no winning. But the worst part, the absolute gut-wrenching worst, was watching my son drift away. Reggie used to call me twice a week, then once a week, then once a month. Eventually, it was only when I called first. He stopped coming to Sunday dinners. He missed his father's 60th birthday because Dina wasn't feeling up to being around the family that day. He even skipped his own grandmother's funeral because Dina claimed it would be too overwhelming for her, even though she'd only met my mother 3 times. Every time I tried to voice my concerns, Dina cried, and Reggie just told me I was the problem. My daughter, Catalina, tried to talk to him, and Dina accused her of trying to break up their marriage. Kevin, my husband, tried to have a man-to-man conversation, and Dina insisted his father never respected her from the start. We were losing our son, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing, we could do. Then, I just stopped. I didn't make a big announcement, no dramatic speeches. I just quietly stepped back. I stopped calling Reggie. I stopped inviting them to things. I stopped sending Dina birthday cards, thinking of you, texts, or little gifts. I stopped asking about her job, her friends, her life. I gave her exactly what she claimed she wanted, space. That first month was excruciating. I wanted to reach out so badly, my fingers physically ached to dial Reggie's number. But I didn't. Kevin wanted to call, check on Reggie, but I told him, no. We wait. If Dina wanted us gone, then we'll be gone. Let her have what she asked for. The second month, Reggie called, asking why we'd been so quiet. I told him, calmly, we just didn't want to overwhelm Dina. We're giving you both room to breathe. He actually said that was thoughtful. I just smiled and said, we just want everyone to be comfortable. By the third month, Dina started reaching out herself. A text, asking for a recipe. A call to Kevin on Father's Day. Then, she even suggested they come for Sunday dinner. My response? Polite, but not warm. I answered her questions, but I didn't ask any back. I accepted their visit, but I didn't make a big fuss. I gave her absolutely nothing to work with. When they came for dinner, I kept conversations light, superficial. Weather, sports, what was on TV. I didn't ask about her work, her family, or her feelings. When she tried to draw me into a deeper conversation, I just smiled and said, oh, I don't want to cry. When she offered to help in the kitchen, I said, oh, I've got it covered, dear. When she complimented the meal, I said, thanks, and changed the subject. And Dina? She didn't cry that night. She had nothing to cry about. I hadn't done anything wrong, and I hadn't done anything right in her eyes. I just existed in the same room as her, without giving her any ammunition whatsoever. This went on for 6 months. Every visit was pleasant, shallow. Every conversation, polite, empty. I treated her like a distant acquaintance, not a daughter. And slowly, something began to shift. Reggie started calling more often. He even started asking to come over sometimes without Dina. One night, he told me Dina felt like we didn't like her anymore. I looked him dead in the eye and said, that's not true, son. We just learned to keep our distance to avoid upsetting her. He got quiet. I told him, we never stopped liking Dina. We just learned what she needed from us was distance. The words came out calm, honest, almost clinical. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. He didn't respond right away. The silence stretched between us for what felt like an eternity. I didn't fill it with explanations or apologies. I just let him sit with what I'd said. Finally, he cleared his throat and said he needed to go. Dina was calling him from the other room. We hung up, no usual small talk. I set the phone down, staring at it. Kevin walked into the kitchen. Was that Reggie? He asked. I nodded and told him what our son had said about Dina feeling disliked. Kevin pulled out a chair, sat at the table. He asked if I heard what he heard in Reggie's voice. I joined him. We looked at each other across the worn surface where we'd eaten thousands of meals together. I told him Reggie sounded confused. Lost, maybe. Kevin agreed. He said Reggie sounded like he was finally starting to question the narrative he'd been living with for 4 years. We sat there in the quiet kitchen, and I realized this might just be the beginning of something shifting. Not fixed, not solved, not perfect. But shifting. I didn't let myself hope too much. Hope had disappointed me before when it came to this situation. 2 days later, my phone rang again. It was Reggie. This hadn't happened twice in 1 week for over a year. My heart hammered, but I kept my voice perfectly normal when I answered. He asked if we wanted to come over for dinner at their place on Friday night. I paused, just for a second, then accepted with the same polite pleasantness I'd maintained for months. I didn't gush. I didn't ask what we could bring. I just said, that works for us. We'll see you at 6. He sounded slightly thrown, like maybe he expected a bigger deal. We confirmed the time and hung up. Kevin asked what that was about, and I told him we were going to their apartment for dinner. He raised an eyebrow, but just said he'd make sure he was home on time. Friday arrived. We drove across town, a simple bottle of wine in hand, nothing expensive or carefully chosen. Reggie opened the door with a smile that looked a little forced. Dina appeared behind him in a nice dress, more makeup than usual. She hugged us both, ushered us inside. The apartment smelled like garlic and tomatoes. I complimented the smell. Dina told us she'd been cooking all afternoon. I noticed her watching me constantly, her eyes tracking my movements, like she was waiting for me to slip up, to give her something to react to. I sat on their couch and asked Kevin about the drive over, keeping my attention focused on him. She brought out appetizers. I thanked her, took one. The conversation stayed light. Weather. Kevin's documentary about deep-sea creatures. Dina tried to draw me in, asking if I thought she used enough seasoning. I told her they were very good, then turned to Reggie and asked about his commute. Dinner was served. The food was actually quite good, and I said so, genuinely. Dina smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She was still watching me, that careful attention. Reggie poured the wine. We ate in relative quiet. Then Dina started steering the conversation towards deeper topics. My childhood, she asked. How we met, my marriage to Kevin. I gave brief, pleasant answers, then redirected. She asked about my feelings about being a grandmother someday. I smiled, said, that would be nice, if it happens, then asked Kevin to pass the bread basket. I could see her frustration building with each neutral response. Her jaw tightened slightly. Her smile became more fixed. She wanted emotional connection, vulnerability, and I was giving her nothing but pleasant, impenetrable surface conversation. After dinner, Reggie suggested coffee on the balcony. Dina said she'd clean up and waved us off. The three of us stood out in the cool evening air, looking at the parking lot below, sipping our coffee. Reggie shifted his weight. Kevin commented on the temperature. We went back inside after a few minutes. Dina had the kitchen sparkling. She suggested a board game, but I glanced at my watch, said we should probably head home soon. It was only 8:30, but I didn't want to extend the visit into territory where Dina might find more opportunities to create problems. We gathered our things. Reggie walked us to our car, lingering in a way he hadn't done in years. Hands in pockets, looking at the pavement. Then he mentioned Dina thought we were angry with her. I looked at him directly. We're not angry, Reggie, I said honestly. We're just being respectful of boundaries. He nodded slowly, like he was trying to work something out in his head. I didn't push. Didn't explain further. We hugged him. Goodbye. Got in the car. The very next Sunday, Reggie showed up at our house. Alone. Standing on our front porch at 10 a.m. I was surprised, but kept my face neutral. Dina had a headache, he said, couldn't make it, but he wanted to stop by anyway. Kevin appeared behind me. We exchanged a glance, but neither of us commented on Dina's absence. We just welcomed our son inside. I offered to make coffee. He followed me into the kitchen, sat at the same chair he always sat in as a kid. I could feel something shifting in the air between us. We joined Kevin in the living room. For the first time in months, Reggie relaxed into the kind of easy talk we used to have before the wedding. He told us a story about a difficult client. Kevin laughed. Reggie asked my advice about a leadership role. We talked for 2 hours about nothing important and everything important, all at the same time. I realized how much I'd missed just being his mom, not walking on eggshells. He seemed lighter here, without Dina. His shoulders weren't hunched. His laugh sounded genuine. When he finally said he should go, he stood up slowly, like he didn't really want to leave. We walked him to the door. He turned back before stepping outside. Casually, he mentioned Dina had asked him to find out if we were upset about something specific. The question hung in the air. I told him, there's nothing specific. We've just learned that less interaction seems to work better for everyone's comfort. He looked at me for a long moment, trying to read my expression. Then he nodded and headed to his car. That night, Kevin and I were getting ready for bed. He stopped brushing his teeth, looked at me in the mirror. Are we being manipulative? He asked. Using the same kind of emotional games Dina plays? The question caught me completely off guard. I finished washing my face, dried it. We're not twisting anything, Kevin, I said, we're not crying to get our way. We're not telling Reggie that innocent comments hurt us, or making him choose. We're just protecting ourselves from constant misinterpretation. Kevin nodded, but I could see he was still working through it. We tried being warm and open for years, I continued. It didn't work. Every gesture got turned into an attack. So now, we're being polite and distant, giving Dina exactly what she claimed to want. If that's manipulation, then I don't know what else we're supposed to do. He agreed. We finished getting ready in silence. The following week, my phone rang. It was Catalina, my daughter. Her voice had an edge I rarely heard. What's going on with you and Dina? She demanded. Dina had apparently gone to her, crying about feeling rejected by the family, wanting to know why I'd become so cold. I sat down on the couch, took a deep breath. I explained the pattern of the past 4 years. The constant tears over innocent comments. How every interaction became ammunition. I gave her specific examples, the pot roast, the job, the couch, the gifts. Catalina went quiet. Then she admitted she'd noticed Dina crying a lot over the years, but she'd always assumed we were actually saying hurtful things. The admission stung, but I understood it. That's exactly how the manipulation worked. My daughter asked why I never told her. I reminded her what happened every time anyone questioned Dina's reactions. She cried harder. Reggie defended her more fiercely. I told Catalina I couldn't risk losing both my children. She sounded shaken. I need to go think about this, she said, and hung up. I sat there, wondering if I'd just made things better, or much, much worse. 2 weeks later, at our house for Kevin's birthday, I watched Catalina observe Dina with new attention. We were all chatting when someone mentioned traffic. Dina's eyes got watery. The drive was so stressful, she sniffled, construction, and I hate feeling rushed. A minor thing, but tears were already forming. Catalina caught my eye. I saw understanding click into place. She was seeing it happen in real time, now that she knew what to look for. Dina noticed the look between us. She stopped mid-sentence. Is something wrong? She asked, her voice going up, already preparing to be hurt. Catalina, smoothly, said, "Oh, I just remembered something funny at work." She laughed, changed the subject to the cake. Dina's eyes narrowed slightly, looking between us. I could see her calculating whether she was losing an ally. The rest of the evening, she stayed close to Reggie, watching both of us more carefully than usual. 2 weeks passed. Reggie called to chat about normal things. Near the end, he mentioned Dina wanted to plan a big family vacation. Rent a beach house. I kept my voice pleasant. That sounds nice, but we'll need to check our schedule. No commitment. No excitement. No questions. Just neutral acknowledgement. Reggie seemed to expect more reaction. There was a pause before he said, "Dina's really excited about it." I told him to have her send details when she had them. The conversation ended shortly. I realized I'd given him nothing to report back except polite, bland interest. 3 days later, Dina called me directly for the first time in months. Her voice was bright, eager, launching into the vacation idea. She'd found rentals, wanted my opinion. I listened pleasantly, made small agreeable sounds. When she finally paused, I told her to send me the details. I maintained the same friendly but distant tone. She pushed for more enthusiasm. "Are you excited? Do you think it's a good idea? Have you always wanted to go to the beach?" Each question was fishing for emotional investment that I simply didn't give her. "Yes, it could be nice. The beach is always pleasant. I'm sure you'll find something that works for everyone." My responses were mild, positive, but utterly empty of the reaction she craved. The conversation grew awkward. She ran out of questions, and I wasn't filling the silence. She said she'd send information soon, and we hung up. That evening, Kevin told me Reggie called him at work. Our son wanted to know if Mom is okay, because Dina said I sounded depressed or distant on the phone. My husband assured him I was fine, just busy with my own activities. He mentioned my book club, my volunteer work, my garden. All true things, painting a picture of someone content and occupied. Reggie apparently accepted it, but Kevin could tell our son was confused why I wasn't more excited. I sat with this information. Dina was trying a new strategy. She was positioning herself as concerned about my well-being, rather than hurt by my actions. It was clever, in a way, one that made me respect her tactics even while I saw through them. Instead of being the victim of my coldness, she was now the caring daughter worried about her mother-in-law's mental health. It made her look compassionate, while still painting me as the problem. The difference was, this version suggested something was wrong with me, rather than something I was doing to her. I mentioned this to Kevin. He agreed it was a smart move. We both knew concern was easier to sell to other people than hurt feelings over nothing. The next Sunday dinner, I watched Dina serve the roast. Her movements were careful, measured, like a performance. She set a plate in front of Kevin, immediately launching into questions about the vacation rental. That bright, eager tone. She turned to Kevin, wide-eyed. "Do you think she's dealing with depression? Or maybe empty nest syndrome? She just hasn't seemed excited about the beach house." My husband set down his fork, looked at her calmly. "Actually, Dina," he said, "she's happier than she's been in years. Spending time in her garden, book club, volunteering." Dina's smile froze slightly. That clearly wasn't the answer she wanted. She tried again, maybe she's just good at hiding her feelings? Kevin just shrugged. I've never known her to hide much of anything. Reggie shifted in his chair, changed the subject to work. After dinner, Catalina caught my arm in the hallway, pulling me towards the spare bedroom. Her face was troubled. She told me she'd been thinking about all the times Dina cried over the years. The pot roast comment, how Dina sobbed for an hour. The couch incident, Thanksgiving, the wrong gift. The reaction, Catalina whispered, it always seemed so out of proportion to what was actually said. I watched her process this new reality, reviewing old memories with fresh perspective. She admitted she felt guilty for not seeing it sooner. Her voice cracked, there were times I thought you were being difficult, Mom, when you were just existing normally. I told her that's exactly how manipulation works. It makes everyone doubt themselves, turns normal interactions into minefields, and reasonable people into villains. She hugged me tight, whispering an apology I never expected to hear. The following week, Reggie called, sounding frustrated in a way that reminded me of him as a teenager dealing with friend drama. He asked why family gatherings used to be fun but now felt tense. I chose my words carefully. Reggie, I said, people in relationships change over time. Sometimes we need to adjust our expectations. He made a noise that sounded like disagreement, pressing me. Do you think my marriage changed things? He asked directly. I told him honestly. Marriage always changes family dynamics. It's just a fact of life. Not good or bad, just different. I didn't elaborate. I didn't explain. I didn't give examples. I let him draw his own conclusions. The silence on his end stretched. He finally said he needed to think about that, and hung up. An hour later, my phone rang again. It was Reggie, and his voice had that tight quality that meant Dina was upset. She'd overheard part of our conversation, he said, and she was crying because I'd implied their marriage ruined the family. I stayed calm. I explained, Reggie, I said marriage changes dynamics, which is normal and neutral, not negative. I repeated my exact words. For the first time in 4 years, Reggie sounded uncertain defending Dina's interpretation. He paused. Maybe she misunderstood what I meant, he ventured. I agreed. Misunderstandings happen, son. We've all experienced plenty of those. He didn't argue. He just said he'd talk to her, and ended the call. Kevin's birthday dinner came 3 weeks later. We were at a fancy downtown restaurant. Dina showed up with a large, wrapped box. She set it on the table with ceremony, telling Kevin to open it right now, before we even ordered. Inside was an expensive watch. Dina leaned forward, asking, do you love it? Is it the best gift ever? Are you surprised? Kevin thanked her sincerely, simply. He said it was thoughtful, appreciated. He didn't gush. Dina's face fell. She tried again, put it on. Show everyone. What do you think of the color? Kevin strapped it to his wrist, held it up. It's nice, he said. I'll enjoy wearing it. Nothing more. I watched Dina's expression shift, hopeful, disappointed, then something harder to read. Later, after dessert, as Reggie paid the check, Dina's eyes got shiny. She reached across the table, touched Kevin's hand. I just wanted to make you feel special, she said, her voice trembling. Because I know I'm not always good at showing love to my in-laws. It was a smart play, positioning herself as trying hard, vulnerable, turning her excessive gift into effort rather than manipulation. I responded warmly, the gift was thoughtful, Dina. Kevin appreciated it. Both things were true. I didn't add anything about her being good or bad at showing love. I didn't reassure her. Didn't comfort her. Didn't give her the emotional drama she was trying to create. Reggie watched this exchange, an odd expression on his face. His eyes moved from his wife to me, to his father, and back again. Something clicked into place behind his eyes. A recognition. A week passed. Reggie called. He sounded tired. Their neighbor had stopped him, mentioning raised voices from their apartment. Nothing terrible, she'd said, but enough that I wanted to make sure everything was okay. Reggie told her they were fine, just working through some things. He went inside and told Dina. My phone rang again that afternoon. This time, it was Dina, crying so hard I could barely understand her. The neighbor was spreading rumors. People would think they were having problems. She felt humiliated. I told her, I'm sorry you feel embarrassed, Dina. That must be uncomfortable. She kept crying. What should I do? How can I face the neighbor? I suggested gently, if you're worried about privacy, you might want to be mindful of volume during disagreements. Practical advice. Nothing more. Most apartments have thin walls, Dina. Sound carries. Keeping voices down helps maintain privacy. She went quiet for a moment. Thank you, she whispered, and hung up. 2 days later, Kevin came home from the hardware store. He'd run into Reggie. Our son mentioned Dina thought I was cold about the neighbor situation, that I didn't offer enough emotional support. Kevin asked what kind of support Reggie thought would have been better. Our son stood there for a long moment, trying to find an answer. He finally said he wasn't sure. Maybe just more reassurance or sympathy. Kevin asked if the advice about keeping voices down was helpful or hurtful. Reggie admitted it was actually sensible, just not what Dina wanted to hear. Kevin told me this while we were making dinner. I could see him working through the same thoughts I'd been having for months. The phone calls started coming more often after that. Reggie called on a Tuesday, asking about a work problem. We talked for 20 minutes, office politics, difficult coworkers. He never mentioned Dina once. He called again on Thursday evening, this time asking how Kevin and I handled disagreements in our early marriage. I told him we talked calmly, took breaks, made a rule never to go to bed angry. He asked what we did when one of us felt misunderstood. I explained we practiced repeating back what we heard, making sure we were listening, not just waiting to respond. Kevin picked up the extension, joined the conversation, sharing a story about a fight we had over finances. Reggie laughed at the right parts, asked thoughtful questions. I realized he was soaking up these perspectives like someone desperately needing a different way of seeing things. The calls kept coming, always when Dina wasn't home. Always with questions that seemed casual, but felt weighted with meaning underneath. 3 weeks into this pattern, Reggie mentioned during a Sunday visit that Dina thought they needed better boundaries with extended family. He said it casually, while helping Kevin clear the dinner table, like he was testing my reaction. I told him, boundaries are healthy, Reggie. You should absolutely do what works for your marriage. He stopped stacking plates, confusion clear on his face. He admitted he thought I'd be hurt, maybe even argue. I told him, I want you to have a strong marriage, whatever that takes. And if that means seeing us less, or talking to us differently, we'll support that. He didn't say anything else, just finished clearing the table with a thoughtful expression. The following Saturday, Kevin and I were at a busy restaurant. Reggie and Dina showed up. Small talk. When the waiter came to Dina, she asked about the salmon special. He explained it came with asparagus and roasted potatoes. She asked if she could substitute the asparagus. He said the kitchen could probably do that. He suggested green beans or a side salad. Dina's eyes started getting shiny. Her voice wobbled. I just wanted to know my options, she whimpered. I wasn't trying to be difficult. The waiter looked startled, assured her she wasn't being difficult at all. She wiped at her eyes, ordered the salmon with green beans, and the waiter practically ran away. Reggie's face went crimson. He stared at his menu. I watched, realizing he was embarrassed. Actually embarrassed by his wife's tears in a public place, over an innocent interaction. I'd seen her cry hundreds of times, but this was the first time I'd seen him look uncomfortable about it, instead of protective. On the drive home, Kevin asked if I noticed what happened with the waiter. I said I did, keeping my voice neutral. He didn't push. Sometimes, Reggie needs to process his own observations without me pointing them out. Sometimes, the best thing I can do is let him see what he sees, without trying to interpret it for him. Catalina called me Tuesday morning. She looked tired. She'd had coffee with Dina yesterday. Dina had spent an hour crying about feeling excluded from the family. Dina apparently told Catalina that nobody really liked her, that she tried so hard but nothing was ever good enough, that she felt like an outsider at every family gathering. My daughter said she tried to be supportive, making sympathetic noises, offering reassurance. But the whole time, she kept thinking about our conversation. Wondering if the exclusion Dina described was real, or just her perception of normal interactions. Catalina stirred her coffee. I don't know what to believe anymore, she admitted. I'm starting to question things I took for granted for years. I told her, honey, we can't control what Dina chooses to believe, or how she interprets things. We can only control our own actions and words. My daughter sounded exhausted. She said she was going to take a step back from the middle of all this. That night, my phone rang at 11:30. Reggie's name. My heart jumped. I answered immediately. Everything okay? His voice sounded rough. Mom, do you have a minute? He asked. I sat at the kitchen table. As much time as you need, son. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, do you think I've been a good son? The question hit me hard, made my throat tight. I told him honestly, you've always been a wonderful son, Reggie. You love your family deeply. I could hear him breathing, processing my words. I waited. He said quietly that he felt like he'd been choosing between his wife and his parents for 4 years, and he was exhausted from trying to keep everyone happy. I told him, that's a terrible position to be in, Reggie. No one should have to live that way. He made a sound that might have been agreement, or pain. I gripped the phone, resisted the urge to blame anyone. I didn't mention Dina directly, but I asked Reggie, are you happy in your marriage? Do you feel like yourself? Can you talk to your wife about hard things? The silence stretched so long, I thought he'd hung up. Then he said, I need to think about that. We said goodnight. I sat in the dark kitchen, hoping my son was finally asking himself the right questions. Kevin came downstairs. I told him about the call. He sat across from me, took my hand. We didn't talk about what it might mean, or what might happen next. 2 days went by without a word from Reggie. I forced myself not to reach out. Kevin checked his phone constantly. I caught myself doing the same. On the 3rd day, Reggie called. While I was making lunch. He told me he'd suggested marriage counseling to Dina. She'd apparently cried, asked if he was planning to leave her, turning his request for help into an accusation of abandonment. My son sounded frustrated describing this reaction. I could hear him questioning whether wanting counseling was really the same as threatening divorce. I suggested gently, Reggie, those are very different things. Asking for help shows commitment to making things work, not giving up. He was quiet again. Thanks, Mom, he said. I have to go. I stood in my kitchen, holding a half-made sandwich, realizing my son was starting to hear his own words differently. Starting to notice the patterns he'd been living with. The next afternoon, Dina called me, crying. Her voice wobbled and broke. Reggie was pulling away from her, she didn't understand why. I listened without offering solutions or comfort, just making small sounds to show I was still on the line. She talked in circles about feeling confused, hurt, trying so hard, not knowing what she did wrong. Eventually, she stopped and asked directly, do you think I'm a bad wife? I told her honestly, Dina, I think marriage is hard work, and sometimes couples need help navigating challenges. It was neutral, true, refusing to either condemn or absolve her, giving her nothing to twist into ammunition. She pushed for more, her voice getting sharper. Do you blame me for problems with Reggie? I said, every relationship has 2 people contributing to its dynamics. Marriage is complicated. No one person carries all the responsibility. Again, nothing concrete for her to grab onto, while not lying or being cruel. She made a frustrated sound. I thought you would understand, she said. I hoped we could talk honestly. I told her, we are talking honestly. I'm giving you my real thoughts about marriage and relationships. She said, that's not what I mean, and hung up abruptly. Reggie called me at the end of the week. Dina had agreed to counseling, but only if they can find someone who understands how critical in-laws can damage marriages. He sounded tired. He was starting to hear his own words differently, starting to notice the specific framing Dina used for everything. I asked how he felt about that condition. He admitted he wasn't sure anymore what was reasonable to ask for, and what was just another way to make everything someone else's fault. I didn't push him. I just listened as he worked through his thoughts out loud. He'd made an appointment for next week. I told him I was proud of him for taking this step, that it takes courage to ask for help. After we hung up, Kevin asked what happened. I filled him in. My husband said he hoped the counselor could see through the manipulation. I reminded him that good therapists are trained to spot patterns and dysfunction. The following Tuesday, Catalina called. Dina felt vindicated, she said. The first counseling session had apparently focused on family boundaries, which Dina reported as validation that we'd been the problem all along. Catalina sounded worried, asking if I thought the counselor would side with Dina. I told her good counseling takes time, explores all perspectives. She asked if I was worried. Yes, honey, I admitted. But I also trust that truth has a way of coming out, over time. Catalina sounded relieved. We talked for a few more minutes about nothing important, just letting the heavy conversation settle. That night, Kevin found me washing dishes. He asked the question I'd been avoiding. Should we prepare for Reggie to cut us off completely if the counselor sides with Dina? I dried my hands, turned to face him, seeing the real fear in his eyes. That our son might be lost to us forever. Kevin, I said, we've already survived 4 years of distance, watching Reggie slip away piece by piece. We'll survive whatever comes next. He nodded, but didn't look convinced. I understood. I wasn't entirely convinced either. But what else could we do, except wait and hope the truth matters more than tears? The next 2 weeks dragged by. No word from Reggie about counseling. I resisted the urge to call. Kevin checked his phone constantly. I caught myself doing the same. Then, Reggie called after the third counseling session. He sounded different. Lighter, somehow. Like someone just took a heavy backpack off his shoulders. He said the counselor had asked him to describe specific incidents where he felt caught between his wife and parents. The exercise, he said, made him realize something. I gripped the phone tighter, not wanting to interrupt whatever breakthrough he was having. My son said that when he tried to give concrete examples, he kept coming back to Dina being upset over things that, in hindsight, seemed normal. The counselor apparently asked him to consider whether the conflicts were actually conflicts, or interpretations. Whether the harm he was trying to prevent was real or perceived. I could hear Reggie breathing, working through thoughts he'd probably never let himself think before. He mentioned the pot roast, the job question, the Thanksgiving invitation. Listing them out loud, like he was hearing them fresh for the first time. I didn't celebrate. I didn't push him to elaborate. I just listened as he worked through his thoughts out loud, figuring out what he'd been living with for 4 years. He said he needed to go, but he'd call again soon. I told him I loved him before we hung up. Kevin came into the room. I filled him in. Hope and caution fought for space on his face. The following Sunday, Dina didn't come to dinner. Reggie showed up alone, explaining his wife decided to take space from triggering situations, which was apparently what the counselor suggested. He seemed both relieved and guilty about enjoying time with us without tension, like he was betraying Dina by relaxing in his parents' house. We didn't make a big deal out of her absence. We just set the table for 3 and pretended this was normal, even though it felt like the first real family dinner we'd had in years. Reggie talked more than he had in months. Stories about work. Asking Kevin's advice on home repairs. I watched my son's shoulders gradually drop from their usual defensive hunch. I saw his smile come easier, without constantly checking to see if someone was upset. During one of these visits, a few weeks later, Reggie apologized. Out of nowhere. For missing so many family events over the years. I could tell he'd been thinking about it for a while. I told him he was trying to protect his marriage, and there's no shame in that, even if the situation was more complicated than he realized. He looked at me with wet eyes. I missed Grandma's funeral, he whispered. Dad's birthday. So many Sunday dinners. I can't get any of that time back. I hugged him. We're just glad to have you here now, son. Holding on to regret won't change the past, but being present now? That matters. Kevin joined the hug. We stood there in the kitchen, like we used to when Reggie was young and the world was simpler. A few days later, Catalina called. Dina had reached out, crying that Reggie was changing and not being the man she married. My daughter told Dina that people grow and change, and that's healthy, which apparently wasn't the supportive response Dina wanted. Catalina sounded tired. She was finally seeing the pattern we'd been dealing with for 4 years. She mentioned Dina accused the counselor of turning Reggie against her, of making him question their entire relationship. I reminded my daughter that good counselors don't turn people against each other. They just help people see situations more clearly. The next week, Reggie called. The counselor wanted to do a family session with him, Dina, Kevin, and me. Dina was resistant, he said, worried we'd gang up on her. But Reggie insisted it needed to happen. The counselor thought hearing everyone's perspective in the same room might help them understand the full picture. We agreed to participate, if it might help our son. Even though the idea of sitting in a room with Dina while discussing 4 years of manipulation made my stomach hurt. Before the session, Reggie asked me privately to just be honest, without attacking Dina. I promised to speak my truth calmly, focusing on specific examples, not character judgments. He thanked me. I know this isn't easy, Mom, he said. But I need to understand what's real and what's been twisted. The family session happened on a Wednesday afternoon. A small office, pale blue walls, 2 beige couches. Miles, the counselor, sat in a chair between us. Dina sat close to Reggie on one couch, hand gripping his. Kevin and I sat on the other. I could feel the tension, physical, pressing against my chest. Miles asked me to describe our relationship history with Dina. I took a breath. Kept my voice calm, even. I outlined the pattern, starting 2 months after the wedding with the pot roast comment. The birthday party, the Thanksgiving invitation, the wrong gift, the couch compliment. I stuck to specific examples. What I said, and what Dina told Reggie I meant. I watched Dina's face redden, her eyes fill. I kept going. Miles asked for honesty, and that's what I was giving him. When I finished, Dina was crying openly. She looked at Miles with wet eyes. She's making me sound manipulative, she sobbed. When I was just hurt and sensitive. She's twisting everything to make me look bad. Miles handed her a tissue, waited for her to calm down. Then he asked her to describe what specifically hurt her about the pot roast comment. Dina opened her mouth, closed it, forehead creased. She said it made her feel like she could never measure up, like I was saying Reggie would always prefer my cooking. Miles asked if I actually said that, or if that's what she interpreted from the comment. Dina was quiet for a long moment. Then she admitted it was what she felt, not what I said. I watched Reggie during this exchange. His eyes were clear, focused, in a way I hadn't seen in years. He was looking at Dina like he was seeing something for the first time. His jaw was tight. His hand loosened from hers instead of gripping back. Miles guided the conversation. How Dina might express hurt without tears. Was feeling compared to the same as being attacked? Was all the hurt over 4 years equal to the actions that caused it? Was missing a grandmother's funeral a reasonable response? Reggie shifted. I could see him recognizing the pattern playing out right here, in this room, watching Dina cry and struggle to explain actual harm beyond her feelings. We left the session without any big resolution, no breakthrough moment. Just an agreement to keep meeting, to work on how we all communicate. Miles suggested Dina work on separating interpretation from intention, and that Reggie think about the patterns he's observed in their marriage. In the parking lot, Reggie walked us to our car. He pulled me into a hug that lasted longer than usual. He whispered, his voice rough, "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom." I held him tight. Kevin put his hand on our son's shoulder. We stood there, and I realized we were starting to find our way back to each other. Not in some perfect, healed way. But in small, genuine steps. Life isn't fixed. Dina's still crying. And our family still has years of damage to work through. But it's better. So much better than it was 6 months ago. This journey has been incredibly difficult, and honestly, we're still navigating it. But seeing my son reconnect with us, seeing him start to truly see what's been happening, it gives me hope. I wanted to share this with you all because I know so many families deal with complex dynamics and manipulation. So, tell me, have you ever faced something like this? What would you have done in my place? I'm truly curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below.